Honorable Minister, Shri Ashwin Kumar Chaube ji, Shri Sudhanshu Pandey ji, and my colleague in CII, Seema, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and it's my pleasure to add on my welcome to all of you, and it's certainly nice to see everybody physically, and more so to say that in the hybrid form, there are many more who are able to attend. So this is, I think, one of the positives of the post-COVID world. Honorable Minister, may I first of all thank you for sparing your valuable time and being here with us today. I know you wear multiple hats. You had multi-dimensional contributions to public service. You have a very busy schedule, and you've made time for all of us here. So thank you very much, sir, and we look forward to your guidance and perspectives on this very important subject, a subject where I think India has certainly taken leadership, as my colleague alluded to, at the global stage. We not only have committed to net zero, specific targets for emission reductions by 2030, and we are promoting a global alliance for solar energy under the concept of one sun, one world, one grid. And that's a very transformative initiative because that's a pathway for renewable that's extremely critical for the world. Thank you, sir, for all the inspiration and guidance. I'd also like to extend a very warm welcome to Shri Sudhanshu Pandey ji. And I'm indeed very grateful to you. I know you have a very hectic schedule today. You have a conference to attend in Agra, and despite that, you've been kind enough to grace the occasion. So really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Well, we are meeting at a time where nobody needs to say today that sustainability is an existential crisis. We used to say that in earlier events. I don't think anybody needs to say that today. It's staring at us. And the theme for this year's summit is therefore very apt. It's about transforming sustainable future and transforming the risks into the opportunities. And we can see all around us, there are extreme weather events in Europe. Europe is experiencing a drought which is not seen in 500 years. Summer temperatures went to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. There are rivers where water has receded. And I'm told the sunken ships of World War II are visible. Not only that, but it's also impacting logistics. China has its own share of issues. In Europe, the amount of wildfires, the forest fires that Europe has seen this year is actually 3 times more than what the world has seen between 2006 and 2021, last 15 years. So that's the magnitude with which things are increasing. In a neighboring country, we know what the devastating floods have done. And India has its own share of problems. We recently had floods in Assam, in Karnataka, and this was just after a severe heat wave. And this is also along with certain regions not receiving enough rain. And floods has become a part of the landscape. Every year it happens. In fact, India is seen as the flood capital of the world, 7th most vulnerable. And what is this doing? I think besides quality of life, it is also creating a lot of economic devastation. CDP members alone estimate losses of $60 billion this year. Supply chains are disrupted. Last year, in Thailand alone, the floods disrupted 14,500 company supply chains. This year, we are seeing that happen in Europe and other places. And this is aggravating the problem because it's in a post-pandemic world where the supply chains are just stabilizing. And another very important impact is the impact on the issue of food security. This year, Crops such as maize, soya, and sunflower are going to be impacted in Europe, rice, wheat, and soya in China, soya, wheat, and corn in US. In India, we have seen the impact on wheat and anticipating impact on rice. So this whole facet of food security is getting very, very critical. And this year is not unique. One can make a similar list for the year prior to that and the year prior to that, and we will only find that the pace is only increasing. So it's becoming a serious problem, and it's a serious problem when Harvard Business Review estimates that the world must produce 58 to 98% more food by 2050. And here is a situation where it is actually getting more and more difficult to manage the needs. And that is what is also leading, besides the geopolitical dynamic, I think this whole issue of climate change itself is also fueling inflation, which has its other ramification in the whole economy. So there are multi-dimensional impacts we are seeing on climate change, right from disruption of value chains, businesses, to agri-value chains. So there are tremendous impacts we are seeing. It is good news that there is better realization, better commitment. We saw in COP27, many more nations committing to net zero, many more enterprises committing to net zero. India itself revising its targets, updating its targets very recently shows India's commitment. And all this, no doubt, must accelerate. But the question before us is that despite all these commitments, the reality is the world is going to cross 2 degrees as per IPCC report. In fact, 2.4 by end of the century, which means that these extreme weather events of floods and droughts will double. Heat waves will multiply 5 to 6 times. So we have, besides decarbonization and besides reducing emissions, there's also a question of how do we prepare ourselves to a world where extreme weather events are going to be more. And here I would like to quote from a recent book, I think, which articulates this problem very well. It's called Hothouse Earth. The author, Bill McKay, said, and I quote, "We can do little to avoid the coming climate breakdown. Instead, we need to adapt to the hothouse world that lies ahead and to start taking action to try to stop a bleak situation deteriorating even further." I think this is equally important, and this requires urgent and, if not more, equal attention to decarbonization. Now, both the aspects of mitigation and adaptation require a multidimensional approach. I think in both, certain pathways have to be discovered. For example, in hard to abate sectors, certain pathways have to be discovered. Issues of economically making green hydrogen available, carbon storage. I think these are technologies that need to be developed and commercialized, and there's a lot of work happening. Hopefully it will happen. But aside from that, let me say that today there are lots that all of us can collectively do and accelerate the work towards it. And I would like to illustrate this, and my colleague Seema alluded to a very comprehensive framework. So let me just exemplify it through our own example in the company I represent, which is ITC. So I'll use that just to illustrate what is possible. So starting with this whole first on mitigation through decarbonization and sequestration. So as an enterprise, we have adopted a constant focus on reducing energy intensity, renewable energy, sequestration, circular economy. I mean, these principles form part of our core strategy, and with consistent practice, I'm happy to tell you that today we are carbon positive, water positive, solid waste recycling positive, and all this for more than a decade. So what I'm really saying through this is that it is entirely possible for an enterprise today to become climate positive. and play a role of nourishing the environment as against depleting societal resources. And enterprises, and we've always believed so in ITC, in CII, that enterprises as large economic organs of societies have this responsibility to bring in societal value creation at the core of corporate strategy and contribute towards climate mitigation. And other than certain areas, certain sectors, I think it's immensely possible. And these are economically viable models. So it is good for planet, it is good for the company's competitiveness also. Both of these are delivered. Let me now share some thoughts on the second facet, which is on adaptation. Again, this requires a multidimensional approach. But the starting point, I believe, here has to be a very comprehensive climate modeling to identify where are the hotspots. We started in ITC, we started this journey not very long back in 2020. Hotspots were identified. There are other companies that have also been doing it. Having identified hotspots, for example, a particular geography is identified as a hotspot. A particular value chain is identified as operating in a difficult area. So then the next step is site specific. So you get more granulated data, you get crop specific data, and you target those hotspots so that your resources are targeted and do not get dispersed, because it's a large problem that needs to be dealt with. While we are doing this and working on it, I think there are certain areas that we have also generally been working on as a common themes, which contribute towards resilience and adaptation. One I would like to share with you is this climate smart villages. And this is something that all of us can collectively take forward and accelerate. Today, we cover about 450,000 farmers in 25,000 villages. And 70% of these locations, which are more than 5 years old, are now classified as high resilience value chains. And what is interesting is, the agri value chains have their own share of emissions. So through this process, the emissions have reduced by up to 45%, and also farmer incomes have gone up by 40 to 80%. So it's good for planet, it's good for farmers, it's giving you sustainability in your value chains. Similarly, India is water stressed. 54% of India is water stressed. So integrated water harvesting structures is one of the initiatives. So we actually work both on the demand and the supply side. We are providing soil and moisture conservation to 1.3 million acres with 25,000 community water harvesting structures. The demand side management has led to a reduction of 40% across 14 crops. And all our sites, factories which are located in high water stress areas, we are going for AWS certification. So committing to water stewardship and water positive balance, which has already occurred in some locations. So I'm again and again, sharing some examples just to just to kind of share it as a case study, so that collectively we can do much more and starting to make a difference in this area. And needless to say that whilst we work on adaptation, whilst we work on decarbonization, I think we have to be also cognizant of the fact that today, despite depleting natural resources, we also have a serious issue of not generating enough livelihood and of social inequity. So therein, the importance of a just transition is even more. And the agri-value chains from that perspective in emerging economies, roughly half the workforce in India is in the agri-value chains. So the resilience of that is equally important. And if we get that right, I think it's a huge opportunity, really reinforcing the theme of transforming risks into opportunities. India has the largest arable land in the world. I gave you that data on how much food production is to go up. And if we can build resilience, improve productivity, I think it's an enormous opportunity going forward. In line with our philosophy at CII that enterprises being large economic organs of society, and we would like to pursue growth with a framework of responsible capitalism. In line with that, I'm delighted to also inform you that CII has formulated the CII Climate Action Charter, and it's a privilege for all of us, an honor that we'll be launching it today. It reflects collective commitment of the members of the CII for accelerated action to enable a just, equitable, and resilient transition. I would certainly take this opportunity to encourage all stakeholders, all enterprises who have not signed on to it, please participate, because we have a collective responsibility to society, and collectively we can, with the enormous amount of resources that enterprises have, make a purposeful impact to make the world better. And before I conclude, I'd like to congratulate and thank Seema, Shikhar, and the team at the CII ITC Center of Excellence on Sustainable Development for organizing this summit and for bringing sustainability to the center stage of discussion in the country. Honorable Minister, Shri Sudhanshu Pandeji, thank you once again for being here today, and we look forward to your views and thoughts on this important subject. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.